I don't think they played very well.
Yeah, that's like an easy explanation. Shopify Rebellion. Is that the answer?
That's all right, Avery. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Not for Broadcast. And we are finally kicking off the group stage of the Riyadh Masters. We got one day under our belt, and we are a reactionary podcast. So we are naturally going to talk about it immediately. Falcons went 0-4. Are they washed? Are they just straight up garbage now, Avery? Before we continue the rest of the podcast, we're going to take a moment to shout out today's sponsor, Battlesmiths. It's a fresh take on RPGs, blending crafting with strategic combat and captivating story. You'll forge powerful gear, outfit your team, and lead your custom-built squad into battle. Managing a fantasy workshop and fielding heroes. Sounds familiar to us Dota players, right, Avery?
And if you're looking for a game to fill those queue times or cool down after an intense pub match, Battlesmiths is your perfect companion. What sets it apart is its depth. You need to carefully consider classes and their gear, unit placement, and when to use consumables. And the best part is that you can make meaningful progress in short bursts, which is perfect for those in-between match moments. Plus, Battlesmiths is not just about solo play. You can reign supreme in online PvP as well.
That's right. So there it is. Join Battlesmiths now on Android, iOS, Mac, and PC to hammer out your destiny. And for our viewers, use code TundraCraft for an exclusive starter pack. Thank you, Battlesmiths, so much for coming out and sponsoring the show. And let's get back to it.
No, they're fine. We saw them in the gym last night. They were all cooking.
Well, not all of them.
Everybody was there.
Not everybody.
Outside of Snake King Crit.
Outside of Snake King Crit, the old boys did not go to the gym.
The goons were all there. AY was showing me some memes. It's in good spirits. They're all getting strong, getting buff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see no other team there. That's all I'm saying.
Well, maybe other teams didn't have to exercise out their frustration of losing 4 games in a row.
I don't know. Healthy habits build healthy minds, Austin. So I think I might even have to up my Falcons predictions after day one.
Oh yeah. So now they're going to be taking first place over Spirit.
No, they're not going to win, of course. But
okay.
Maybe they'll get two instead of 3.
Oh, that's right. You had them third.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Now they're going to get
might
second.
Be more convinced after that.
Is this a meme, or are you actually more convinced by their reaction to losing 4 games?
I think the reaction was fine. I don't know. I don't really know what happened to them.
I don't think they played very well.
Yeah, that's like an easy explanation.
No, I legitimately the series against Gaming Gladiators played well, but they did not play perfectly. Falcons, they just played subpar. They just played below, compared to everybody else, their play is probably fine. But frankly, for what Falcons level and everything that I've seen from them this year, this was probably one of the worst performances I've seen from them.
It was definitely not crisp. I feel like they were also just getting outscaled in all the games. And it feels like no one can actually end games early. Like, even if you look like you're going to end the game early, it's really hard to not throw going high ground. So all these games we saw yesterday are some team gets a 10K lead, they go high ground, they get a lane, then they go for the second one, and then they throw and get wiped.
Yeah. And
then it's just they can't ever come back. That happened to them a few times.
I mean, that happened to Gaming Gladiators, and it happened to Falcons. Falcons tried to do it against Spirit. Game 1, they had a huge lead, threw that one away.
But Gaming were able to come back, so I don't know. I feel like if you just have the extra scale on top of it, then you don't care.
Sure. And that's something that maybe Falcons have. Do you feel like do you think all 4 of their drafts, they were outscaled?
I think they struggled to find impact for Amar. I think that was the biggest issue. His heroes were kind of all over the place. He's playing Legion, he's playing Slardar, they're putting Sand King mid. It's a lot of these heroes that just to me are kind of low impact. They're these single target anti-carries, which I guess you can say is what he's traditionally played, but they don't seem too strong in the meta because the carry pool isn't really a agi carry pool. So you can't really anti-carry Brood or something.
Sure.
It's who cares? You can't anti-carry Dragon Knight, or I don't know what else people are playing, but if it was Terrorblade or Phantom Assassin, sure, but Like some of these heroes just don't care about Razor. Like you Razor Link a Brood, he's hitting for 600. I don't think the guy cares. So I think their pool is kind of weird because you don't really want to pick these anti-carries, and then every big offlaner in the meta right now is a big team fighter. Like you look at all the bans every game, it's like Brewmaster, Darkseer, Primal Beast, whatever, Darkseer. It's all these big AoE team fighters who push lanes fast, and so that's also not what ATF's been playing. I mean, he can play those heroes, but he plays them more as like a carry. Like he'll play Brew, but he'll farm on it. We haven't really seen him play Darkseer. We haven't really seen him play Primal. So I think that's the biggest question with that team right now after day one. What is that guy going to play? Because if you can't make him work, then your team's just fucked. Like you can't just play a tournament where he's like having medium impact. That guy has to be firing on all cylinders, and then your team's really good.
And do you think they're not fucked? So you think they are going to find a solution for him?
Yeah, I mean, that team's too smart to not find something that works, but it doesn't mean it'll be great for them, right? They could have gotten patched out. It's hard to know. I said that was their one weakness of that team.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you can't know if you get patched out until you know it. That's the problem. Like, you can sit there and be like, oh, maybe we got patched out, but you can't know until you get like last in a tournament. You're like, oh, shit, all our heroes suck.
Sure.
So pretty unknown right now.
It's when you try and swerve and try and play something different and it fails. You're saying that's when you actually, if you know, you know.
But it's like if you were to sit down and pick 3 heroes for ATF to play right now, what is it? Like Timbersaw, I guess? Is he even that strong? I don't know. I guess he is, but
yeah, it's like he should be Primal Beast. Frankly, I think that hero scales up well enough that it fits into his.
Yeah, they might just start first picking Primal and flexing it. Small Rain plays it too.
I mean, after what Collapse is showing with Primal Beast, it just seems like rock solid. Can do very little wrong with that hero, I think, at this point in time. It scales up. You can still build auras on it, right? You could still go pipe, maybe even get a Greaves. It's an initiator. I feel like it just does everything for you without being like overwhelming.
They're probably just going to push towards the team fighters that he plays. So it's going to be Brewmaster, Primal, maybe Sand King, Timbersaw. Yeah. He probably plays Darkseer. They're probably just going to go to that, and their games will be a bit more fluid. But whether they're good enough with that type of lineup to win, I don't know. That's another question. I feel like probably not.
Game of Gladiators looked good. They came out, they looked good after they lost to Heroic, but the fact that they came back and 2-0'd Falcons, I think, was a pretty big statement. I think they themselves set the story for that series, basically saying that they wanted to get back into it. I think they were tilted after the Heroic series, and they needed to be able to prove something, and I think they did. Right, 2-0ing Falcons, even just one win, I think, would have gone a long ways for them there. We saw Quinn popping off at the the Falcon chanters. Sure are a lot of Falcons fans in the building. They sure do cheer at all the wrong times for Dota fans, but
what can you do?
Sometimes you just don't know if your team got wiped or not. You know, what can you do?
I think if that team can keep finding cores that they can play fast with but still win late game, then they're going to be in really good shape.
Yeah. If it's Falcons, the biggest key is figuring out Amar. Then for Game of Gladiators, it's figuring out Dyrachyo.
Yeah, a little. I mean, I think he has heroes. Like I think Chaos Knight, Broodmother, Alchemist are all heroes they can play that you can snowball early game and fight with Gyro, and then you can still go late. I think maybe Quinn's hero pool might be more important. I think Ace is going to have all his team fighters. I think that's back for them, which is a very good thing. Yes. Quinn's hero pool, I think, is a bit murkier because Ember's in the meta, which is actually doing very well stats-wise. Leshrac, I guess, can kind of be there because IO's viable. And you have your Pango, which definitely helps. Yes. But then I guess Storm is also viable. Like I guess a lot of his hero pool is viable. It's just a question of how much of it are they willing to pick. Saw him playing Voker and he was fine on it. So I don't know. They might actually be in a pretty good spot. I can see the hero pools aligning for them this event more than it has in the past.
Anybody else that stood out to you one way or another? Entity is on a hot streak.
I mean,
I think they might. I think you maybe should have taken Entity as like one of the play-in teams that could get top 4.
No, they're not going to get top 4.
Okay. I mean, just saying, they 2-0'd PSG
Don't
Quest.
get too anxious on day one, Mike. Though I did say Entity were going to like go. I think they said they're going to go up in bracket, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, I'm still big on that
one
team.
Of the two.
But it's still a very different thing, like doing well in groups and then winning the best of 3 versus a team that has time to prepare against you.
Sure.
Like, that's a whole different story. So I don't really care how well you do. Like, if you do like 12-0 in groups or you do like 8-4, I don't think it makes any difference. So just because you're winning some extra games, it doesn't actually help you in that BO3. I think...
Talked to Sunby in the elevator. They went 2-2, but he felt like they should have gone 3-1. Then again, every team I feel like I've talked to has always said, we should have won one of those games or something like that. Of course. But
I think Liquid looks like the most volatile. I don't know what's going on with that team.
Yeah, they won that first game pretty easily and then fell apart in the second one.
It seems like they're winning or losing every game by like literally 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's GG is called. So I don't know what that means. That's insane. Something's going on with lane domination or lane crumbling, I guess.
Do you think that if it is a good meta for Gaming Gladiators, then it's also a good meta for Liquid?
No, because I just think 33 changes that team too much. I don't think they can reliably play at the same ultra fast run you over pace to win an entire tournament. I think they'll win games off that, but I think they also have to be able to play slower.
Yeah,
when he's on something that's greedier. So I don't know. I don't think it's the same for them, but obviously a lot of the hero pools overlap. Like Nisha's probably going to play a lot of the same mids. You have similar offlaners for 33 in terms of these aura builders and zoo heroes, but I think the carry pool is very different. I still go back to like, I don't know what Mickey ever plays. I never know going into a tournament. So I guess just TA again or something. I don't know.
TA. I mean, Monkey King's still kind of there. Chaos Knight. I think he still has some of the same active hero pool that Duraccio has.
I guess. I don't know. I feel like I don't see Mickey playing things like Alchemist or Brood though, really, right? Like
definitely not the Alch.
So I don't know. Maybe. But that's always just a big question mark for me. I don't know where that team is.
Well, I think that, for day one, obviously we didn't watch every single game. So it's kind of just, I think, everything that we have to say about the opening of groups. Obviously, the big standout story was Falcons, and needed to be able to talk about that. We'll see whether or not they actually recover. We had Crownfall, another patch, part of that dropped. Part 3 dropped of Crownfall. I haven't even looked at it, but I've seen everything that's shown up on Reddit.
Big fighting game.
What is that?
Letting Dota players let out their built-up rage from pubs. Once you play a couple pubs in a row and you want to, bash your wall in, instead you can go and bash someone else in a fighting game. Makes sense.
Where did that come from? If you are Valve, where did that come from?
It's probably an old idea, honestly. It's probably something they've had on the register for a long time, and then it was just like, what can we slot into these acts to give some extra content? That's what I feel. I don't think it has any direct relation to. I don't think somebody 6 months ago was like, I want to make a fighting mini game. I think it was just they probably have a docket of ideas over years and years, and this was like a good time to slot one of those in.
Yeah, I just imagine that this is way more work than a fishing game.
Yeah, probably.
You know what I mean? Or the whatever, the flying game.
Decent amount of work.
That looks like a lot of work, and there is no immediate payout for it. I mean, what is the difference? How much money are you going to be making off of this Crownfall Part 3 with that fighting game or without that fighting game? It's probably
doing it for the love of the community, Austin. What's wrong with that? Why are you such a pessimist?
I'm just
Maybe it's something cool for you and you're complaining about it.
I think it is really cool.
Classic Dota community.
I hope they didn't do it for me because I don't give a shit about it at all. But I do think it's really cool. I was just astounded by the quality of it.
I mean, everything they've produced for this thing has been pretty high quality.
Yes, it has. But I think that almost went to another level, for one, and two, it's high quality, and it seems like it would take a lot of time. So I'm just super curious, who on the Valve team was just all of a sudden super passionate to make a super sick fighting game.
It's possible that things like this had assets that were created in the past.
Yeah.
Like maybe this thing was 90% created like 4 years ago and then it got shelved. Right? And then they bring it out, touch it up, and put it in. Like I think that's how a lot of things in Dota kind of work. You know, heroes get shelved for years, like patch ideas get shelved for years, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's not.
I mean, two of the characters are Marcy and Dawnbreaker, so relatively new assets to Dota.
Yeah, there's always new stuff, but I'm saying they also tend to like store stuff and bring it back out.
Sure.
I'm not saying this is the case. I don't know, but I think sometimes that helps boost up ideas pretty quickly if you need something. I'm not sure where this came from, but it is very high quality for something that doesn't directly lead to monetization or a new hero or anything.
Yep. Which that is one of the things missing from Crownfall. I didn't expect it personally. I was not expecting a hero or a game mode off of this one, just because the last part was like a huge patch. So I feel like part 3 is where you're like kind of chill. And I'm expecting anyway that the end of part 3, story-wise, if anybody's gotten through that, will tease new heroes, if there's going to be new heroes. I mean, Ringmaster or whatever is like, I assume Ringmaster comes out some point during Crownfall, you know, like maybe at the very end of Crownfall or something.
I don't know. He has nothing to do with it, though.
Nothing to do with it yet. I'm like, maybe the story leads to him at some point.
Bird Samurai,
or Bird Samurai.
Bird Samurai.
Why
mythos.
Is it just because it's somewhere in the code that there's a
coded name
hero?
for Bird Samurai?
Oh, okay,
because there was the names for like Squirrel or Hoodwink and
sure.
There's a couple of those.
Yeah.
So there's a Bird Samurai somewhere. So that's what I mean. Bird Samurai could have been made like 5 years ago, right? The idea.
Yeah. So I'm expecting Bird Samurai or Ringmaster, whatever, to probably be coming out at Crownfall.
I'm expecting
4,
disappointment. So I hope that they live up to my expectation.
I hope you're disappointed.
And then I won't be disappointed, actually, if you think about it.
That's a vicious cycle to get into.
Either way, I'm going to be content, I guess.
Guess so. So we had that. I don't think there's really anything else to say about it. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. We can't really play much Dotas here, so not getting a chance to get our hands on it just yet. And then I had some other news I want to talk about that is not Dota related.
The political election.
That's right. It's time to talk about your thoughts about January 6th. No,
Wow, you're going to get our episode flag now. I'm going to have to edit that one out. Can't say that.
There was some very interesting, I thought it was very interesting development in the Counter-Strike scene. A commentator or analyst, probably one of the more divisive analysts in Counter-Strike, called Maui Snake. He created, it just goes to show the difference between Dota content and Counter-Strike content. He was making a check stealer tier list. As in players who are overpaid and under-delivering in results.
Shopify Rebellion. Is that the answer?
That's S tier for sure. That is S tier for sure.
Sorry, but it's true. I mean, facts be facts, not my opinion.
So he was making a check stealer tier list for Counter-Strike teams, not for Dota teams. We can make that if you want. We can make that content.
No, that's okay. I have enough enemies.
Okay.
I think I just made a few more.
So so he was making this. In order to make this, he put together a salary listing for each one of the teams. Now, it is not exact, but from what he is saying, it seems very reliable outside of 4 different teams. So I think this is this is obviously very current information, and I don't think player salaries really get talked about very often. And I pretty much never see them talked about in Dota. I see them talked about in other esports and stuff like that. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. What do you think? First of all, let me just ask you, what do you think? There are 5 players in a Counter-Strike team, and there is 1 coach. So this total salary per month will include 6 people, will include the coach. What do you think the highest paid Counter-Strike team makes a month?
Well, around $2 to $250.
You are right on the money. $220,000 for Vitality, who are current ranking number 2 in Counter-Strike.
So around $40K a month for a top player.
What do you think? Now, this one is more rumor heavy. This one I'm getting straight from Reddit comments. What do you think the highest paid player in Counter-Strike is?
There's probably some outlier, right? Some guy who's getting 50, 60K a month.
Okay. The rumor is apparently that ZywOo goes for 80 to 100K a month.
Yeah, that's probably overinflated.
You think it's overinflated?
I mean, maybe not. Like, the thing is, if you have some player that's crazy value brand-wise or something, then the salary can get inflated because it's like he's bringing direct monetary value to the org. Right?
Yeah.
Like, the org's willing to pay more because they get it back almost directly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's more direct monetization channels in Counter-Strike than Dota.
Yes.
So
one of the biggest things is that paying for a team, a highly competitive team in Counter-Strike will get you into the majors. You get into the majors, you get sticker money. Sticker money is insanely valuable for any organization.
So there's like more reason for it because you get it back.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
And ZywOo is held as probably like he is looked at or was looked at as like the best Counter-Strike player for CS2. He was very good in the previous one. It was like him and Simple. And now Counter-Strike 2, he's one of the best. There's like this there's player that came out of nowhere called Donk for Team Spirit, who's currently owning. But he would obviously be like the most played. So 80 to 100K, that sounds like about right.
Sure.
What would you think? What do you think? I don't know if you actually have any numbers on this. What do you think the most played player gets paid in Dota?
You're asking me to leak numbers here or what, man?
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, this is not information I want to leak because it's like not up to me to leak it.
Okay.
That makes sense. I can give you a range.
Yeah, just give me a range. I'm not asking for an exact number. I'm just saying
I mean, I do know these.
Okay. So what would be a top 10 player in Dota 2? What are we talking monthly?
Okay, so I mean, the way I break it down is you're looking at a tier 1 team, the average player on a tier 1 team, like 6 invited teams to TI, right? Some of those have a little more brand value or a larger org like Liquid. Some of them just have like really more expensive players because you've won TIs. If you win TIs, you can demand a way higher salary, or if you do really well. So like Gaming Gladiators won 3 majors, got second at TI. They're going to get a big pay raise for next year, right? The org wants to retain them. Team Spirit, those guys win 2 TIs. They're actually the team I know the least about salary-wise, but I have to imagine like they have a lot of leverage, right?
Sure.
As you win 2 TIs, like, all right, you better start paying us more. We're going to go to another org who will use that. So I think between like all those tier 1 teams, you're looking at 20 to 30K a month.
For a player?
Yes.
20 to 30K. Okay.
And you're looking at the upper range of that, the more tier 1 they are. Yeah. I do think there are some players getting potentially above 30K a month.
I mean, I'll just say right now, possible that someone like Arteezy, who has insane brand value, even if his player value isn't as high. I'm trying to think of who has like an equally high brand value.
I mean, I know at certain points in Dota history, players have gotten over 30.
Yeah.
Because their stock value is insanely high for whatever reason. But that doesn't always stay for long term. A lot of players also have tournament win incentives. So again, maybe you win TI and you have like some huge bonus because you won TI, right?
Yeah.
And it bumps you really high for like a year, but then you fall off. So I think that's the upper range of Dota. Like, I don't think there's a Dota player who's earned more than 40K a month ever.
Okay.
As a base salary. Of course, there could be some deal like maybe Arteezy gets streaming deals and all that.
Yeah.
So he's probably effectively earning a lot more per month. But I don't think that's an org directly paying him. And this excludes prize salary as well, which is obviously a much larger component in Dota compared to Counter-Strike or League or something.
Yeah.
Which is why salaries tend to be lower. Because there's an assumption if you're winning, then you're making up a decent chunk of that through TI and EWC and whatever.
Yeah. I mean, considering the revenue that you can get off of stickers, it does not, like looking at the numbers that I'm looking at here, Counter-Strike does not seem that far above Dota teams.
I actually thought it would have
I'm looking at like about 8 or 9 teams that are 150 and up.
I actually think
150 would be 30K.
I think Counter-Strike is like in the most reasonable range at the moment of almost any esport. I think League is like insanely overinflated.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that ecosystem is going to survive the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dota player salaries are also overinflated, but simply because everything else has been cut back. And I feel like Dota players provide very little direct value to an org based on their salary, unless you're winning, and not everybody can win. So on average, player salaries in Dota tend to be a little overinflated, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you don't have a sticker system that works in Dota for an org to benefit off of, then the only other thing they really benefit off of outside like brand stuff, which we already talked ad nauseum about how Dota players aren't the best at that, would be prize cut. And that has been jealously guarded because TI's prize pool was so high at some point in time, nobody wanted to give more than, like 5% ever.
I mean, it's just like, what are you paying a Dota player for? If I go and build the team for next year, what am I paying a Dota player for? Am I paying them for promotions on social media with mega following? Okay, there's some value in that. Am I paying them for content?
Pretty little for. I think Dota is not great social media wise.
So. Yeah, it's not amazing. There's some value. 100K followers on Twitter or whatever. There's some value. Am I paying them for content? Rarely. I think there's very few players that stream regularly in a year and play competitive.
Yeah.
Very few people who make YouTube content. Basically nobody, right?
It's very few orgs actually take the time to make YouTube
most of the org
regularly.
Content is not doing well enough to earn sponsors on its own.
Yeah.
You can plug sponsors into it, but it's not earning out. So I'm not really paying them for that. Am I paying them for building my organization's brand up? Maybe a little, but I would argue that is almost in Dota completely tied to getting to LAN and winning.
Yeah.
So basically, I feel like the only thing you pay a Dota player for in the modern age of Dota is to win. Is to qualify to LAN, so you get your team on LAN, and to win, to build a luxury or premier quality to your organization, which is like what a lot of the Southeast Asian mobile organizations do.
Yeah, which used to have like a pretty direct, like there's this, okay, my team wins a LAN event, we get a trophy, you get all these shots of people winning, and then you turn that around to advertisers and be like, your name is associated with champions, with winning, with all of these sorts of things.
And because it's hard to win in Dota, there's a mystique about it.
And now with EWC, there's even more direct winning equals money, which is the whole EWC, where it's like, if you are one of these multi-game orgs and you do well enough, you end up getting a bunch of money by, the fact, that's what Falcons, for example, are trying to do, is they won their Call of Duty. They've already won Call of Duty Warzone, and there was League of Legends, which T1 won. Now we've got Dota, and they're trying to get the most points out of this EWC system so they can rake in a bunch of cash.
But to finish my point, that is why I think the average Dota player salary is overinflated right now, because one, it's not really sustainable with the money most organizations are bringing in, and two, you're basically paying every premier team as if they're winning, which is not true.
And it's very hard to win in Dota.
Yes, so
not reliable to just buy a super team and know that they're going to win.
There's a huge difference between paying an average player $10K a month and $10K a month with bonuses if you win, and $20K a month without bonuses, right? And I always felt like org should always be more on these incentive structures in Dota, particularly if players don't want to do content or not streaming in the downtime or whatever, because then your value to an org is literally you're winning. If you're not winning, why am I going to go pay a player $25K a month to not win?
Yeah.
Right? If I pay him $10K a month and I say, hey, if you win on LAN or get top 3, then you get $20K a month. That just makes way more sense to me, because what's your argument against that as a player? Oh, I should get $20K a month to sit here, not win, not go to LAN, and not do content for you, and not stream, and what? That's the part I think is overinflated, right?
Yes, the argument right now is somebody else is willing to pay me that. So
exactly, but that's just a bad marketplace, basically. And usually those types of bubbles collapse at some point because someone's unwilling. Maybe Dota will just maintain its premier status long enough that doesn't happen. Well, there's some truth in that, and I like a lot of these orgs that come in from CS:GO or League will look at player salaries and it feels cheap.
Sure.
So they got that going for them, I guess. I don't really have any stake in it. I don't really care if players get paid more or not. I just think, if anything, it's good if players get paid more based on the scene doing better.
Yeah.
But I think when players get paid more based on the scene retracting, that's like doubly bad because you're draining more money out of the ecosystem that could be going into other things to build up the scene in a way. Not 100% true, but it's like if an org spends $1 million a year on their Dota team instead of $500,000, the next year they might not do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not sustainable for the org. So you're draining them for like what long-term payoff? There isn't really one right now. So that's where I think those high-end player salaries are like, yeah, they're good now. Obviously, every player is going to try and get it, but long-term sustainability is probably not great.
So that kind of wraps up the episode. We have our question of the week, which is a question about organizations, which I thought fit nicely. At ASCP Certified, it said, "Hey Cap and SVG, do organizations have people who are constantly scouting for top-level pub stars or potential new players? The Thompson arc showed someone pays attention to the latter, but for me, when OG announced that new team years ago with BZM and ATF, most of us casual viewers had zero clue who they were. Thank you for the content."
So what is the question? Are teams still doing that?
Are organizations scouting at a top level? And I assume the answer is no, that's players, right?
Yeah, I don't think any org is really doing it. I mean, Chinese orgs have their like pupil teams.
Yeah, there is a farming system for China and like Russia where they have like junior teams that, they have contracts over, and how much of that is about scouting new up and coming talent? How much of that is just being able to own players before they get big?
I don't know. Scouting in Dota it's too hard because players change too fast. Like it's too hard to look at some 10 or 12K random player on a ladder and be like, this guy's going to be the next premier carry. It's just too hard.
Do you think you could do that as a former pro player? Like if the scene became developed enough that more organizations like Tundra, pick up Zai as general manager, let's say more pro players are in an organization position. Do you think you could have that kind of scouting, or Dota just isn't the game for it?
I mean, you can, but it's like the way it happens is really fast. Like you have some player who starts to make a run, he gets IMR, or maybe other people start to talk about him. And then he gains momentum in like the rumor space. And then it's like, okay, this guy, he's a legit prospect, and everybody tries to grab him. Like it happens really fast. It's not like you can go back, like someone like Malrine, like you can't go back 2 years and be like, I'm going to take this guy now and invest in him. You could, but it might have never paid off.
Yeah.
Like even if you think, whereas year and a half later, there's a lot of buzz about like who's going to get this guy after TI. At a certain point, he got over that hump and people realized this guy's going to be good.
Yeah, people knew, for example, that Malrine was like a very high-tier prospect before this season started.
Right.
There were a lot of people trying to pick him up.
So like at that point, you can definitely go in there and try and fight for the eye, and you can be tuned into the scene to recognize that maybe a little bit earlier. But to pick that guy up like a year before that type of thing happens is a lot more difficult. I think you can do it, but it's like almost not worth it in Dota, because let's say you do that for 10 guys and 8 of them fail. Is that actually even worth it in the end? I don't know. Probably not.
That would also require you to have enough control over the team to be able to slot in players into a team that is typically just not how Dota teams are made.
Yeah, right? No Dota organization has that much power. Might go there eventually. It should, but Dota players are extremely reluctant to give that up because it personally benefits them. So, yeah, it's tough.
And there's not really any sort of like stats or anything. Like you can't moneyball your way into creating a good team, right?
I mean, I do think I was generally good at understanding strengths of players and their potential. I feel like almost all the players I played with have done better over time. We played with Saberlight for a little bit. We played with DM for a little bit. We played with even like Palmo as a stand-in. Quinn doing, like when we wanted to play with Quinn, I remember Jack telling me this guy is insanely valuable based on his comms, even if parts of his game are rough.
Yeah.
I remember scouting Snaking and thinking this guy was like the best shot caller in NA, even if his attitude had issues. So I feel like almost all the players that I played with and thought this guy's going to be good for X reason did end up being true, but doesn't mean it's going to work in your timeline either. Obviously, it took those guys longer in different team environments or whatever to get there. So even if I know the potential's there, even if I can scout it, it doesn't necessarily do me any. Like, the development is way more difficult. That's the hard part of Dota.
Yeah, I mean, especially if what you're talking about, if you think salaries are overinflated, then you backing this one guy for 1 year, that's quite a risk if you feel like salaries are overinflated.
Yeah,
you can't. Nobody's investing 5 years into a player.
You rather let another org do that and then just buy him out for a premium, right? Like, it's a better model.
Sure.
I also have always wondered, there's this paradox of, like, you brought up Seb with Ana and Thompson and stuff. Like,
he referenced like Thompson happened, but then OG also had BZM and ATF.
Yeah, so OG is maybe the best scouting org in Dota history. But the big question on that is OG really good at finding the next goated player? Or is OG just really good at turning players into the next goated player? Right? Like, was Thompson that much better than a other random mid they could have picked up? Probably. Like, obviously, he's a prodigy or whatever.
Yes.
But I think there's also a lot of truth in, like, the Seb no-tail guidance and the way that those guys develop a team and guide players and put them in an environment that works is better than a lot of other people too, so that the average player they take and put into an OG team is going to do better. Like, if you took Thompson and put him in a EG or a Team Master or like a whatever, right? Communications and everything aside, a Liquid at the time, would have he done as well as when he got put in OG? Probably not. So there's two sides to that coin.
What about their success post OG though? Right, like Amar obviously had a lot of success post OG. Thompson still finding success post OG. Do you feel like
not as much, but yeah,
sure, not as much. But do you feel like they maybe learned something, or like through their time on OG became a better player?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
As a result that it had lasting impact.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, they learned a lot from those guys, how to play the game and what their strengths were and how to be a teammate and all this stuff. I mean, that's a 2-time TI winning team. They did a lot of stuff right.
Yeah.
So I think it's one thing to say, like, oh, these guys are really good at scouting people, but I think it's another to understand that they're good at scouting guys, but then they're good at developing them too. And those go hand in hand because they're looking for people that they can develop. Like, OG liked very raw new players that didn't have a lot of baggage or old conceptions about the game that they could just bring in and be like, here's how we're going to play and here's how we want you to play, or maybe we're just going to let you do your thing, but here's how the team's going to function, and those guys aren't going to go against that. Whereas if you bring in some 8-year veteran, he's going to be like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do it this way. I want the team to function this way. I want the comms to work this way. And then you have to battle that. And OG, I know those guys really disliked that when they were building those teams, which is why they even had issues with really great players, but they were veteran great players. Like the iteration with Sumail and Soxa, those guys are two really vocal players. Obviously, they're TI winners, and they're great, and every team would love to have them. And those guys loved those guys on their team, but it was that team also functioned differently than a lot of those previous OGs because they're a lot bigger voices, and they're voices with a lot of previous teams and history and ideas of how to play the game. Sumail wants to play the game in certain ways that he wants to play. It doesn't mean he's not willing to go along with stuff, but like he'll push back against you. He'll think things are right. Whereas someone like Thompson might not as much, and they can mold him more, right? It's about moldability. Yeah. So those guys really liked scouting players that they felt not only had the potential, but were moldable by them because they had all of this experience and knowledge, and they didn't need more of it in their point of view.
Yeah.
And that's like a pretty powerful mechanism.
I would also say that the original part of this question is, do organizations, we're talking about OG, but really is that OG or is that Seb?
It's right? Seb and no-tail.
It's like Seb and like I put Seb forward just because he's proven that he can continue to do it. So I don't know exactly how that split happened before, but obviously Seb himself is just capable of being able to do that since no-tail is retired.
So. For sure. I mean, I think as more orgs try and bring in more ex-players for GM roles and stuff like Zai, then it becomes better, which I think there's value there. Like, I think Zai scouting a player for Tundra is way better than Tundra management trying to do it. Right? That's the idea.
Yeah. But like, is Zai going to be able to do that same kind of thing where Seb was not just, he owns part of the org, but he wasn't just a manager, right? He was also the coach. So he's like intimately tied into the
it's
team.
more hands-on.
It seems like a really hard thing to be able to replicate, you know?
Yeah, but maybe you sit down in between your GM, your coach, and your captain, you do it right. And there's enough guiding force there to make it happen.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, it is a big deal. Like if you can scout people ahead and you can get the new young talent in, you need them to win in Dota, kind of like you need one or two of those guys. So the better you can do it, like the better your team is just going to have a chance of winning big lands.
Okay, well, hopefully that answered your question, and hopefully you guys enjoyed another episode of Not for Broadcast. We will come back for another episode with more updates on the group stage for Riyadh. And other than that, you guys can see us casting here at Riyadh. We're going to be casting, well, it doesn't matter, actually. By the time this episode goes out, I won't know our schedule anymore. But we will be there casting, usually at night. So if you want to watch us casting, you can see us there. Goodbye.